The story begins as Nimue, a young witch with the power to control plant life, rides into town on her horse, Old Boy. Nimue is a fae, a species of humanoids who have extra abilities with nature as well as the ability of magic. This causes many to ostracize and persecute them. On the way, she meets one of her only friends in the village, a young boy named Squirrel who enjoys pickpocketing. As she passes through her village, it is revealed that she is an outcast. Passerbys call her a witch, sneer at her, and generally look at her with a sense of disgust. Suddenly, she sees a vibrant flower floating by, guiding her toward a clearing in the nearby forest. There, she notices a deer that whispers an ominous message to her. Death is not the end, Fae Queen. Save them. But before Nimue can make sense of what is happening, someone shoots the animal dead. Soon afterwards, two rowdy men arrive to collect the carcass. They both treat Nimue like a disease, joking with one another not to get too close, as she's a witch. But one of them makes a personal remark about her father abandoning her, and Nimue loses her cool. Green veins start to climb up her neck as she harnesses some kind of magic. This turns the hunter's bow into a snake-like entity that coils around him and strangles him almost to death. Luckily, Nimue's mother Lenore intervenes and snaps her out of her angry state. However, during her episode, Nimue sees flashes of an incident that happened when she was younger. Apparently, her father may have left because he thought she was a curse that would bring darkness to their land. The scene then shifts to a strange ceremonial service, where Nimue, her mother who is the high priestess, and other residents from the village gather around a pyre to worship the Hidden Ones. The Hidden Ones or Dark Gods are mysterious voices associated with the Fae, and their religious beliefs. They choose Nimue as their summoner and everyone is pissed that the Dark Gods chose her. But Nimue isn't interested in being a summoner of any kind. Her mother tries to make her understand that her abilities are a gift, and she should be grateful to the Hidden Ones for bestowing it upon her. Instead of listening, Nimue decides she's done with her village duden, and runs off on her horse, Old Boy. On the way, her friend, Pim, joins her and the duo head to a dock named Hawksbridge. Elsewhere, an evangelist priest, Father Cardin, leads a hateful group of Red Paladins, a group of purists who seek the extinction of the Fae, as well as the extinction of magic altogether. They burn Fae villages up and down the coast as a means to purge the world of magic. Back in the Duden village, the residents retrieve a moonwing that has been badly burned by the Red Paladins. Moonwings are a clan of Fae with butterfly-like wings. She tells them what the Paladins have been doing, slaughtering children and families. But worst of all, she whispers, is the Weeping Monk, who wears grey robes instead of red. He works for the Paladins to hunt down any Fae that manages to escape. The scene then shifts to Merlin, a legendary wizard, as he gets drunk in a bar. He is also simultaneously dealing with a few rogue men. However, from their interaction, it seems as if Merlin might have lost his magic. However, he somehow manages to escape the men and get out of the bar. Merlin also works for the ruler of all lands, King Uther Pendragon, who is not very happy with the wizard. Merlin promised that he would bring the rain to end the drought in his kingdom, but there has been no rain as of yet. As a result, the people are getting restless and blaming Uther for their ongoing struggle. Meanwhile, Nimue and Pim make it to the docks only to discover the ship they wanted to board has already left and will not return for 6 months. Later that day, they stumble upon a charming, male singer named Arthur. Unbeknownst to them, Arthur is a mercenary trying to pay off debts he inherited from his late father when he was 12 years old. Nimue is instantly attracted to him, and it is obvious that he too fancies her. Soon afterwards, Arthur invites the girls to join him for an ale in a pub. Inside, they meet an older man, Bros, and Nimue tries to hustle him. She agrees to bet on a dice roll since she knows she can use her magic to change the outcome to ultimately win. After losing 2 rounds to Nimue, Bros accuses her of being a witch. With all the men in the bar now after her, Nimue and Pim flee to the woods. Arthur follows and offers them a place to stay at his camp. As the night is quickly approaching, Nimue accepts the offer. That night, Nimue and Arthur bond by the fire, practicing fighting styles and even getting close to a kiss. But suddenly, a horse on fire rides by the camp. Taking this as a bad sign, Nimue and Pim decide to trek back home. After a few hours, they arrive at the edges of Duden only to find the entire place overrun with Red Paladins. At the village, just as Nimue rushes in to find her friend Squirrel, Pim gets abducted by a paladin. On the other hand, Nimue tells Squirrel to run into a secret place in the woods and keep hidden. After continuing her journey in the village for a while, she finds her mother bleeding on the ground. She tells her daughter to take an oddly wrapped package to a wizard named Merlin and leave her behind. Nimue doesn't want to abandon her mom, but then another Red Paladin enters and prepares to finish her off. She creates a distraction, sacrificing herself so Nimue can escape. Following this, Nimue takes off running as the scene bounces back and forth between her and Merlin. The wizard manages to make it rain, but something is amiss. Instead of water, the skies open up and pour down blood. Merlin stands on the edge of his castle balcony and is struck by lightning. It catches him on fire and burns a strange sword-shaped scar into the length of his body. Unable to take the hit, he crumbles to the ground. On the other hand, while trying to escape, Nimue is hunted by wolves. She manages to make it to a clearing in the woods and climbs on top of a rock slab there. But the wolves are quick to jump out and bite her. Finally, she unwraps the package her mother gave her, revealing a magical sword. She then attacks the wolves, slaying each and every one of them. After slaying her enemies, she arrives at the spot where she'd previously told Squirrel to hide and calls out for him. Unfortunately, in the process, she attracts the attention of a wandering red paladin. Squirrel is forced to watch the scuffle unfold from the shadows as he cannot warn Nimue of the approaching danger. As she fights with the paladin, the scene quickly shifts to a flashback to when she was a child. Nimue is lured into the woods by some kind of demonic talking bear. The animal then attacks her, and she hears her mom's voice telling her to call to the Hidden Ones. Both the young and older versions of Nimue access their gifts, using them to destroy their respective attackers, the paladin in the present, and the bear in the past. However, the paladin attacker isn't completely dead. Elsewhere, a drunk and naked Merlin lands in trouble with the king. Other bangs down his door, demanding an explanation for the blood rain. Merlin doesn't have many answers for the king. Instead, he slams the doors shut and locks them. He then runs off from the castle just as the guards break the door down. Elsewhere, the Weeping Monk and Red Paladins follow tracks from Duden. They reach the scene of Nimue's wolf slaughter, and are shocked to learn a single Fey girl did that. They also find the paladin who fought Nimue, but he is being strangled alive by twisting, gnarled tree branches. Carden instructs his men to travel to all the neighboring villages, and keep an eye out for a Fey girl wielding a large sword. He threatens anyone who hides her will be burned alongside her. Meanwhile, Nimue tries to wash the blood clean from herself and the sword. A flashback shows her mother cradling her as a child after finding her in the woods after the bear attack. As the other elders think Nimue is doomed to die, Lenore pleads to her father, Jonah, to save her life. But he, too, thinks Nimue won't survive. Obviously, her mother thinks differently since the Hidden Ones saved her. She tends to her daughter's wounds while a present-day Nimue sobs for all of her losses over a riverbed. In the meantime, Squirrel is discovered by the Weeping Monk, who does not care that he is a child. He kidnaps the kid, demanding he tell him how many Fae escaped into the woods. In response, Squirrel spits at the monk and is subsequently taken away. Later, Nimue manages to escape to the nearby village, but several circling paladins guard the entrance. She finds a doctor riding his cart into the gate, and convinces him to let her ride with him inside. She lies and claims she has an aching tooth, desperately needing to get inside to have work done. A guard asks the doctor to state his business, and he says he wants to finish his rounds in the village. Sensing something is amiss, a paladin asks Nimue to take down her hood. He questions where she's from and attempts to find inconsistencies in her story. Finally, he tells the doctor to pull her tooth right there if she really is who she claims. Following this, the old doctor forcibly removes one of Nimue's perfectly healthy teeth to keep up the ruse. It seems to work, although the paladin doesn't look fully convinced. Still, they're granted entry into the village. Inside, an announcement is made by the paladins demanding for any news on the Fae. They offer coins in exchange for her. Anyone who protects her will be labeled a heretic and punished severely. During a flashback, it is revealed that Nimue was a troublemaker from a young age, often running off on adventures. Grandfather Jonah encourages Lenore to be much harder on her, even saying she should be whipped. On the other hand, Nimue is upset because no one likes her due to her scars, and no children will play with her. Because of this, she runs off so much. Lenore loves her and is a fierce protector. However, others in the homestead, including her own father, were never kind to Nimue. Elsewhere, a group of Fae finds the Weeping Monk and Squirrel in the woods while they slumber. They hope to rescue Squirrel and advance quietly, but soon learn that the monk was only using the boy as bait for the Fae. He slaughters all of them with relative ease. Ultimately, the monk releases Squirrel, commanding him to pass the message of his arrival to other villagers. In the next scene, Nimue runs into Arthur, who is also present in the village, and begs him to take her somewhere far away. She even asks him to come along with her. But Arthur's friend, Bors, the same man Nimue hustled in the bar, assaults her. He demands she give him her sword or he'll sell her to the paladins. Enraged, Nimue slices off his hand. Arthur quickly rides on a horseback and pulls Nimue before the situation can escalate. They barely make it out from the gates before they're closed. He takes her to a safe place and initially vents his frustrations at her act of violence. He is aware that he'll now have a bounty on his head. just like her. But Nimue doesn't care about Arthur's problems right now since they're somewhat minimal compared to hers. Once she reveals that she recently lost her mother and entire village, he softens and helps clean her wounds. In another flashback, a young, fresh-faced Nimue is lured into the woods alongside a boy named Wallow, who is promised to another girl named Perry. At first, it seems like he might genuinely like Nimue, but quickly becomes apparent he's part of a group intent on playing a cruel prank. Wallow, Perry, and another teen forcibly pin her to a tree and rip down her shirt. They want to get a look at the scars on her back from her scuffle with the dark god, the freaky bear. Her powers activate, almost killing Perry as the tree roots drag her beneath the ground. Luckily, the boys and Nimue manage to extract her, and they run off, leaving Nimue sobbing. Her mother comforts her later, building her up and encouraging her to see how strong and powerful she is. Lenore tells her not to let a stupid butcher's boy like Wallow get under her skin. In the present day, Arthur takes Merlin's sword from Nimue and wields it like a pro. He's clearly delighted by it, fawning over its power and mystical nature. He offers to help her sell it, since it could help her pay for a ship to escape. But Nimue is intent on fulfilling her mother's dying wish to deliver it to Merlin. On the other hand, Merlin shows up at Duden and discovers Lenore's dead body. Gingerly, he closes her eyes, and it's obvious he cares for her. He then carefully places her body on the illuminated stone slab and lays her to rest. Suddenly, a woman in a widow's shroud appears behind him and asks who Lenore was. He replies that she was called the Healer. It is obvious that the widow knows Merlin. She reminds him that he told them the sword of the first kings, the sword Nimue has, was destroyed. Merlin says he believed it had been, but she ominously warns Merlin that the Shadow Lords will see it as a sign of betrayal if the sword is destroyed. Furthermore, if the church gets its hands on the Sword of Power, it will have the sole power to decide who becomes king. Without going into detail, she urges Merlin to finish the war he started. She also demands him to remember that the world needs Merlin, and not the sorry character he has become. In response, he reveals that he has no magic left in him. It would appear his magic is locked within the mystical sword. He asks the widow to reveal its location since he no longer has the mystical vision to find it. She tells him she senses great power and fear around the sword. Moreover, it is coming toward Merlin, but she cannot say whether a friend or foe currently has the sword. Merlin concocts a plan to melt the sword down in a great fire made by the Fae, as it was forged that way. He needs to go to a mysterious kingdom to find it, as it is now one of the world's most coveted and rare treasures. He asks the widow to give him his horse, the whereabouts of the kingdom, and clay that cannot be burned even by Fae fire. Elsewhere, Arthur promises to take Nimue somewhere safe, somewhere boars won't find them. He carries her into a convent where there are several people that know him. That night, while Nimue sleeps, Arthur steals the sword from her, but not for a nefarious reason. Arthur intends to fulfill Lenore's dying wish while leaving Nimue behind to keep her safe. He tells his sister Morgana that Nimue will probably need to stay for at least a week. Morgana, who is known in the convent as Sister Igraine, is Arthur's half-sister. When their father died, Morgana's uncle, Ector, had her sent away to this convent so Arthur wouldn't have to worry about her while he was trying to pay off their father's debts. In a flashback scene, young Arthur is told that his father has been hurt in a fight. Before dying, his father gives him a final piece of wisdom. He tells Arthur that it requires courage not to kill. In the present, Arthur sets off on his own adventure as he separates from Nimue. A few hours later, Nimue wakes up peacefully in the convent and she sees a nun looking at her. She quickly realizes her sword is gone. One of the nuns, Iris, explains that she is safe now. Their conversation is interrupted by Igraine, who asks Iris to leave. Igraine then slaps Nimue and asks her not to talk to anyone because she might accidentally reveal her true identity as a witch. Following this, Nimue learns that Arthur has taken the sword and decides to leave the convent. However, the Red Paladins are everywhere, so she quickly goes back to hide inside again. Igraine calls Nimue crazy for trying to leave. When the head of the nuns, Abbess Nora, enters the room, Nimue lies and says her name is Alice. Nora tells her that she can help in the infirmary. Later, when Nimue arrives at the infirmary, she sees a dying Red Paladin, the same one who she had fought against outside Duden. The other Paladin riders claim that a Fae girl did this to him. Branches are entwined inside and out of his body, and he's about to suffer a horrible death. Nimue is then asked to get dressed to help treat the Paladin. While on her way to the changing room, she suddenly overhears Father Carden claiming he has found the sword. Hearing this, she goes to the room where Carden is, disguised as a maid with drinks. In the room, the Grey Monk brings maps and Carden claims they can end the Fae for good. Carden's men ask about Merlin, but he says the extinction of all kinds of magic is near. This is exactly why Nimue's mother wants her daughter to take the sword to Merlin. Lenore knew the sword would help Merlin fight against the Paladin. Soon afterwards, Igraine tells Nimue that they must save the Red Paladin, or they will all be killed. Nimue suggests using Fey remedies, which irks Igraine. As she tends to him, markings show on the Red Paladin's body. Igraine states the symbols mean water, earth, and fire. Meanwhile, in the other room, the Grey Monk tells Cardan that he senses the presence of a Fey in the convent. In the following scene, Arthur wants an audience with his uncle, Sir Ector. Arthur owes most of his debts to Ector and his wife Marian. She warns him that her husband has not softened with old age. At the convent, Abbess Nora asks Nimue to dispose of the Fey healing methods, and immediately covers it with non-magical dressing. Cardan enters the room and asks Nora if a Fey girl has joined the convent this week. Nora states that there have been no new arrivals. However, Cardan wants to question all the sisters one by one. Later, Nimue sees Igraine kissing another nun, but promises that she will not tell anyone because she thinks Igraine did nothing wrong. While the Red Paladins start their interrogations, Nimue looks through the plans that the Grey Monk showed to Cardan, but she's nearly caught and asked to go to the barn. Elsewhere, Arthur meets Sir Ector, his uncle. He asks for sponsorship for a tournament happening soon, but Ector reminds him it's for knights. Arthur claims he has grown and wants to earn his respect. Ector respects how Arthur has confronted him and asks if he has a worthy weapon. Arthur then shows Ector the sword and explains where he got it from. While Arthur is out drinking with Ector, Bors tells Ector that his nephew stole the sword from a Fey girl. Ector asks Arthur for the truth, and his nephew admits to stealing the sword. Disappointed, Ector tells Arthur that he's a disgrace, and that he has lost respect for him. Arthur then ends up fighting Bors and his men, killing one of them with the sword. Elsewhere, the Red Paladins interrogate all the girls in the convent, and Nora questions whether this is necessary. However, the Grey Monk can sense the Fey. Suddenly, the injured Red Paladin begins waking up and coughing up blood. Taking advantage of this, Nimue and Igraine leave the room just as the Paladin dies. However, the Grey Monk can sense that the Fey girl has fled. In the meantime, Arthur has been captured and the sword is taken from the Red Paladins. Meanwhile, Igraine takes Nimue into some caves, knowing she is the Wolf Blood Witch. She gives her directions to Arthur and tells Nimue her real name, Morgana, sister of Arthur. Nimue then gets in her small boat and paddles off. As the story ends, Merlin is told that the Leper King, Rugen, has accepted to see him. Merlin plans to take the Fey Fire from Rugen. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you'd like us to continue part 2. Thank you.